The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, listener. You're welcome to Last Word Leadership Podcast. And of course, it's another edition of The Big Issue. And of course, as usual, we are here again to keep you tab on issues of national interest that border seriously on the polity. And as usual, with me here in the studio are our in-house analyst, Chibuzo Okaibe.
Thank you.
Muyiwa Oyinlola.
Thank you.
And of course, a new entrant, Paul Agbo.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, as you can see, most times issues pop up, and as big as they are, just as we try as much as possible to analyze and interrogate them, another one will come, and at the end of the day, you begin to wonder whether you see concentrate on the big issue you're discussing, or you should take up another one. Just as we were talking and trying as much as possible to understand the crisis that has hit the ruling All Progressive Congress recently, another big issue pop up. And of course, the big issue for today is the damning verdict by former chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, Mahmoud Jega, on the ruling PDP, on the opposition PDP and the ruling APC, saying that the two parties are corrupt. In an interview with the BBC Hausa, Jega urged Nigerians not to vote the two parties in future elections. The professor said the two political parties are like Siamese twins of corruption, and it was high time Nigerians ignore them and vote for other parties that will deliver the goods. Specifically in Jega's words, he said Nigeria should dump the two parties because of their bad antecedents over the last 20 years. Looking at their inability to change the economic fortunes of Nigeria for 20 years now, it is now apparently clear that they will not do anything, even if Nigerians vote for any of the two parties again. The bad things this party committed in the past years, Nigerians should never give their trust to the parties again. It is now very clear that these parties will never change, even if they are given another chance. Well, Muyiwa, this is Jega, the no-nonsense electoral umpire who conducted the election that brought the APC to power in 2015. Do you agree with him that Nigeria should reject APC and PDP in 2023?
Thank you very, very much. I think it's commendable that we have Professor Mahmoud Jega coming up at this time. And I want to urge other intellectuals who are sitting back and watching how things are playing out without saying anything to also be speaking up. I think it's high time Nigerians left armchair criticism and come out and in the open and say their mind and also join the fray of politics. Professor Mahmoud Jega has done the two. He has joined politics and he speaks out at all times. I think a few months to the next general election, this kind of job is expected and is commendable. Whether they have done well or not, I think we will say more about this as the discussion continues.
Well, of course, you see the response from from the two major parties in the country was very funny. Why the former INEC boss got his facts right on the PDP? That is what APC is saying. That while the former INEC boss got its facts right on the PDP, it was wrong for him to have compared the APC with the former ruling party. Then PDP also called Jega's judgment to question, saying comparing incompetent and decadent APC to the highly productive and development-oriented PDP is an unpardonable disservice to the country. How do you assess APC and PDP in terms of corruption?
how I assess them in terms of corruption.
Yes.
Well, what has changed? That's the first question. It has what Jega said to me is not new. It's something that has been there for a long time. That narrative has been around for a very long time.
Of course. But you see, why this is very important is that coming from no less a person than Jega, who was at the heart of conducting election, who even midwife the electoral process that brought APC to power. That's why the matter becomes serious.
Well, for me, I think it still doesn't make it new. People have been saying these things for a long time. That the ease at which people cross from PDP to APC and APC to PDP indicates that these are two parties of the same mother. Who the mother is a different question altogether. However, now that Jega has decided to join the fray, I think it is good that will now perhaps see an intellectual take on how politics should be in Nigeria. How far he'll be able to, stir the political waters and push us in a certain direction, we'll be left to chance to see. I don't want to put him on the spot on this one. Let's take the message. And I think the message is very clear, but it is not new. PDP, APC, the same. Most of the things we saw in PDP, we are seeing in the APC. However, some will say we are seeing an amplified version of what we saw in the PDP. And if a party came into power on the back of promises that they are going to change not just the way politics was being done, but change in the way governance ought to be. And at the moment, we appear to be seeing a retrogression of the little, well, PDP, of course, we say they made some progress. But whatever thing we had under the PDP, we are beginning to see a retrogression of those. We talk about security, we talk about corruption, we talk about the economy. Then, I wouldn't fault Jega on the one hand, but it just reflects the reality on the ground.
Yes, before we proceed on it, you said something here. You raised the point here and you say it is it is a question on its own altogether about who the mother of APC and PDP is. Exactly. Please, I put that question back. Who is their mother?
Well, it is left for Nigerians to decide, because every society is a product of its offspring. And so it takes back the question to the Nigerian people. The quality of leadership we get is a reflection of the society. So the society should do a reflection on itself and determine whether or not they actually give birth to these two rascals, as it were.
Well, Paul, look at, you see what PDP said, that Jega is in the shadow of his own goalposts, because Jega's attempt to use a mushroom party to launch himself politically is what is making Jega have this temerity to begin to insult a governing party like the APC. And of course, they now came back to admit that while Jega was right and on point in tagging PDP corrupt, he couldn't have said so of APC. And of course, PDP said Jega's comparison is unpardonable. That Jega should not compare the opposition PDP to the decadent, incompetent APC. You understand?
Yeah.
How do you assess APC and PDP? Which of them would you say is the most fantastically corrupt?
Well, that is the borrowed word from the former British Prime Minister.
Yes.
When he described the Nigerian government as fantastically corrupt.
Of course, because we are doing comparison of corruption here. So I think what we are looking for is the more fantastically corrupt.
I think Jega just started the fireworks of 2023. It is very clear. Being a member of a political party, it is clear. He is trying to buy the sympathy of Nigerians by carpeting the two major political parties. It's just like telling the English and the Americans that the Labour and the Conservative Party should not be voted for, and the Republican and the Democrat should be thrown away. It is part of the gimmicks you find in politics. Since he's a member of a political party, Jega has started campaign. It is clear. On the issue of corruption between APC and PDP, we can't be talking about PDP at this point in time because, one, the APC advanced lots of reasons before 2015 that the PDP is the most corrupt, and the PDP has not do well to advance the interests of Nigerians. And Nigerians look their way. 6 years down the line, we can see clearly that we have not actually moved out of the highway of corruption. It is obvious. It is obvious. And with the economic impact on the lives of Nigerians, it is clear that actually what the APC promised Nigerians did not actually actualize it.
Which is one of them, fighting corruption.
Fighting corruption. The question now, if you go on the streets of Abuja and ask an average Nigerian, has corruption reduced? The answer is obvious. And like somebody said recently that Nigerians will be shocked when the APC leaves power, if this present administration leaves power, the level of corruption, the quantum of corruption perpetuated by members of this administration. So the APC cannot hold its head high in the area of corruption. So they have no right whatsoever to continue carpeting the PDP. But Jega has said something which is very, very important. If you look at the quality of life in Nigeria, things have not really improved. Why? Is it a culture? Is it a way of life in Nigerian politics that when people come, what they think about is themselves, some few individuals, not the generality of the Nigerian masses. So the question now is that who will bail Nigeria out of this situation? Is it the PDP, the APC, or the likes of Jega? So this issue, it is food for thought for the All Progressive Congress and the People's Democratic Party, because they will remain the dominant party, whether we like it or not.
Okay, let's look at, just like Chibuzo said, that we should just look at the message and forget the messenger.
Yeah.
And of course, that is what we are doing here. Whether we like it or not, Jega has stated the obvious, just like Chibuzo said, because that had been the impression Nigerians had about these two major political parties in the country, that APC, PDP are like two sides of a coin. But within the context with which Jega has been able to assess and come up with his own verdict about these two parties, let's look at the war against corruption. Who you are. In terms of the war against corruption, who has been able to demonstrate the political will to fight corruption between the APC and the PDP?
Well,
comparing the administration.
Talking about forgetting the message and taking the message and forgetting the messenger. I don't think there's anything wrong in taking both the message and the messenger.
No. Because why you say sorry?
I'm saying that in line with what I would say.
Taking the messenger and the message. But at the end of the day, Paul has established a point here that if we take Jega as a messenger, we will not take him serious because him too is campaigning. So perhaps
now back to the issue of anti-corruption. We look at it this way: which government, or under which government, was EFCC created? Under a PDP government. How did that PDP government fight corruption? How much was looted? who looted what was the strategy that the government of that day used to get the money back, or maybe they lost the money. Then under this particular government, and don't forget that this particular government came up with the mantra of anti-corruption. The political will to fight corruption under this government, when it came on board, was quite impressive. But it's like the tempo is going down if it has not waned totally. But by and large, the two political parties owe Nigeria this responsibility of accountability. They have to be accountable to the people. And also, that promise of change that this particular government made when it was coming, I don't think they have been able to fulfill it, especially in the area of anti-corruption. A lot of money is being squandered under this government. There is no account for it. Just like my co-panelist said, that people say that it's only when this government leaves office that we'll know what has transpired. The major difference on the latter mode is that when PDP stole money, the money went around. PDP shared the money. But under this government, we just find out that money is missing, money is only a few, and just keeping the money.
At the end of the day, nobody is coming out to one of it.
Yes.
You're not really seeing the money.
Yes, and you're not even seeing the impact of the money. But I think it's a shame on APC administration that despite the ovation and despite the accolade given to General Buhari before he came on to office, that a lot of things are still going around. Like we borrow money every day. We borrow money every day. What do we do with the money we borrow? The impact is not showing on the people. The money you collected, what did you do with it? The life of an average Nigerian is not improved. The roads are not any better. Let's do the same thing. All these things are part of evidence of corruption. Corruption is not only about when you go into direct stealing. Misappropriation is corruption. Embezzlement is corruption. Lack of good leadership too, quote and unquote, is also corruption. No matter how much you want to blame the PDP, you have to ensure that it was one of the woes of PDP that APC advanced that brought them to power. That's it.
Well, thank you very much, Amuyiwa. You've been able to make a point there. But don't forget that the current administration has said it time without number that why money is not in circulation again is because there is no free money. That the Buhari administration has been able to wrap up all the money that were being stolen and distributed for people for free. And then they are being channeled into infrastructural development and other meaningful projects of government.
But you and I live in this Nigeria. What infrastructure has been developed? What change do you have here? What has changed?
No, but
look at the federal capital city.
You can see the kind of railway.
What have you seen?
You see, under PDP, when they said under Jonathan, when they started this railway thing, if you see the kind of trains they were pulling out, one kind of locomotive like this that was still hitting kuku like those old locomotives. But for now, at least you can see the kind of trains we have, the railroad, the Kano, Abuja, Kaduna road. That is what they are putting before you as part of the things they are doing with this money that once circulated around under the PDP.
Don't celebrate.
Don't
celebrate it that way.
No, of course, I am just giving you the position of government now. I am not celebrating.
What impact has it on the purchasing power parity of Nigeria?
How?
All these infrastructures you mentioned, what impact has it on the purchasing power of Nigerians?
But of course, the country is.
How many Nigerians have been gainfully employed in the last 1 month, in the last 3 months, in the last 6 months, the last 2 years, the last 6 years? When Nigerians are not gainfully employed, there's a problem. So this government cannot come and tell us that look, we have improved lives in the country. So everything boils down to corruption. The inability of government or the leadership to curb, reduce to the barest minimum the amount of money, public funds being frittered away by some few individuals. It has continued. It has become a culture, a way of life here. And from the lifestyle of our leaders, it has clearly shown that, look, we are not ready to fight corruption. Take, for instance, a level 10 officer has a child in UK schooling. What is his salary? His total salary in a month, in a year. He's living in a posh area in Abuja. These are some of the issues. We are not even talking about elected officials, elected public officials, appointees of government. So where is the fight against corruption? When somebody who ought not to be driving a Prado Jeep is driving a Prado Jeep, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. There's a story of a young man in Abuja here who just finished building a house worth 80 million. He was given a chieftaincy title in somewhere around the country, and he started hiding. He didn't want people to know that, look, he's the owner of the house worth about 80 million. He's public servant of level 12. How did he get that money? What's the average salary of a level 12 officer? These are the issues. We want to see corruption being fought, glaring,
transparently.
and transparent. That is why I said when this administration leaves, Nigerians will be shocked that actually things have not improved. So the leadership has to show us a good example, not this media hype and the rest.
Well, thank you, Paul. Listener, before we continue, let's just quickly take a short break. We'll be back in a moment.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
All right, welcome back to Leadership Podcast. We are into the big issue. And of course, the big issue for the day is the damning verdict by Jega on the governing APC and the opposition PDP. So as we're talking, let's look at the anti-media policies of this APC government. Most Nigerians believe that the anti-media policies of this government do not show a government that is committed to the war against corruption, because you cannot fight corruption without the cooperation of the media. A government that goes against the media is a government that has something to hide. So how can we trust this government to be sincere about fighting corruption and choose?
I think it's pretty obvious that the government does not want or is not open to being criticized. And there's no other way for that to reflect other than the way it is going about its campaign to, if you will, regulate, in quotes, media operations. We've seen a couple of damning or some punitive measures against broadcast houses for issues they said when they were in the opposition. Interestingly, now they are in the ruling party and they feel threatened, or they feel worried that same things they said then are being said about them now. So I think it's pretty obvious that they are not ready they don't have the latitude or the heart to take constructive criticism. And that also plays into perhaps a feeling or a thinking that, a realization, if you will, perhaps either consciously or unconsciously, that they are not meeting up with the expectations of Nigerians. Because that is the only way I can rationalize why they react in the way they are reacting. Wow. So perhaps their reaction is a feedback they seem to be getting that, we are not meeting up. And so the only way we can get back is to hush people from exposing the lapses in our government. But ultimately, that does not help any society, because it will only help to retrogress whatever gains they have made. So it's only expected that they become much more, accommodative of press operations, because the press mirrors society. It mirrors society, not necessarily what you see in the mirror as a leader reflects who you are. So when the press does what it does, every conscious leadership is expected to pick from what the press has shown and make amends for that, not to see the press as being your enemy. Once an impression like that comes from them, that such as any administration that has that kind of mindset is bound to have a terrible legacy eventually. Nobody fights the press and succeeds. It's tough.
Well, Jega is telling Nigerians not to vote for the two major parties, political parties in the country. What are the alternatives? Because can Jega, in all honesty, say that there is any difference between the APC, PDP, and the rest of other parties in terms of ideologies? Because if you say the ruling party, the major opposition party, they lack ideologies, they are very corrupt, they have nothing to offer. This other briefcase political party, what do you think they have to offer? Because while they are still being considered as alternative, is because they have not really come out to show themselves. It's still Nigerians that are members of these political parties. What do you think about this?
Interestingly, like my co-panelist mentioned, that Jega is an interested party in 2023 politics. He has a political ambition. He has a political party. So if he's saying that they should not vote for APC and PDP, isn't that really saying that they should vote for his own political party? Yes. I think he's a member of PRP.
Yes.
Yes. And PRP, there's no political party that doesn't have his own ideology.
So you now agree with Chibuzo when he said that we should not look at the messenger?
Yes, 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 I do. Yes, I do. But my position then was that Jega has a posture of a credible Nigerian. Ordinarily, if you were not a political party, if you were not a politician, whatever he says, you can take it to the bank. Get my point? He conducted what people adjure one of the best elections in this country, 2015 general elections. And he was he's a former ASU president. I remember when I was in the University of 1991, he came to school. That's one of the he came to school. He's one of the people that people applaud anywhere he gets to. He has standing ovation. But in this case, saying that they should not vote for APC or PDP, it's not really saying that they should vote for PRP. But now go back to the message. If you listen to the interview or you read what the paper published today, it's talking about how the two political parties have not been able to undo the political and economic situation of this country up to now. I think he has a point in that area. If you look at the amount of money and goodwill that both PDP and APC that have governing us since 1999 have received, they have squandered everything. Among the Committee of Nations, when Obasanjo came on board in 1999, if you look at, as at that time, Nigeria was being considered a pariah nation. Nobody wanted to do anything with this country. In fact, your president could not even go anywhere. Obasanjo taught virtually the whole world. And he was even able to reduce our debt. That's a word for it.
Yeah.
He was able to also bring Nigeria to limelight. Everybody started coming to this country. Today, who wants to come to this country? Nobody. Is that kidnapping? Is that Naira is 400 Naira today, is 525 Naira tomorrow? A lot of things are actually wrong. Jega raised a number of fundamental issues, but it's an interested party.
Well, yes, that is another thing. But at the end of the day, you spoke about Jega's posture.
Yes.
And he has an integrity posture.
Yes.
Of course. But don't forget, in 2015, the PDP cried foul. I remember Jonathan cried foul. And most PDP members, and even the former President Jonathan's men, were alleging that Jega, Rubebe and the rest, that Jega connived with the opposition APC then to rig election, to unseat the government in power. Paul,
Yes.
you can
I
remember.
recall that.
But if you say okay,
Go ahead.
if you say that PDP said the guy did not do well, what did you expect? PDP was thrown out of government now, so you don't expect them to say that that Jega did everything well.
It's all right, but in Nigeria, the political process has been so monetized, and we all know that. At the end of the day, the rest of other political parties don't even have the financial muscle and political structure to compete against APC and the PDP.
Yeah.
So without money and a concrete structure, how can these parties compete against these two major parties, as Jega is claiming?
I think that's the interesting question. At the risk of doing a comparison, Jega appears to be sounding like Buhari sounded before he became president. At the risk of making a very direct comparison, they have their differences, but it's always easy to pontificate from the outside. But when you come inside, it's a different ballgame. And if you remember clearly, before Buhari could become president, he had to form alliances. He had to reach across, They formed the APC the way they did. And we're all aware that, save for that alliance, Buhari wouldn't be president today. And we are also aware that some of these, the alliance helped to generate not just votes, but funds to manage party structure and execute that election. So, with regards to funding, I don't know how PRP is going to do it. Today, if you look at the political spectrum, where is PRP? At the risk of running down a party that has prospects. But as it is today, the reality is that you can barely see PRP outside some parts of the northwest states. That is the reality on ground. PRP used to be very big in the Second Republic, and we knew how influential, because I think it was an Aminu Kano structure. It was so populist, and so we had so much appeal. I am not sure that PRP is the same PRP now. Whether it can become that PRP, of course, there's no ruling that out. But at the moment, I don't think that this PRP now is at that level. That is one. Two, how are they going to fund PRP? Because we are, like you rightly pointed out, we have a highly monetized system now politically. If you don't have the funds, it will be very difficult for you to make headway politically. We have all condemned it. We think it is bad. We think it is not healthy. But the reality is what it is. So it's going to be a huge miracle, let me use that expression, to see how PRP or a third force will emerge without having huge financial backing to get that to happen. And if you ask today, who are those that control some of this major money? You still go back to the governors. You need governors. I don't know how much the business community can help, but the business community will only put money where they think they can get their interest back. So it's a dicey and a tough call. I don't know how the third force and the other free parties are going to do this.
Well, you are really on point, Chibuzo, because you've just said it. Because at the end of the day, even if you want to talk of a smaller party coming up, no support, even from the private sector. The key players in the private sector will always show where they want to reach. They won't go and risk their money in a small party.
Politics is big business.
Of course, it's big business. In Nigeria, it ought not to be so. But meanwhile, let's look at this situation again about alternative Jega was talking about. You see that the performance of these other political parties was abysmal in the last election. And it was under Jega that INEC began the policy of deregistering political party that did not win at least even one seat in the local government council. It was this policy that made even made the APC and the PDP to become even bigger. So how could Jega, who knows this fact, rely on other parties to displace APC and this PDP?
with
Jega is
just about
sounding
19
hypocritical here
months,
for my
with
my own
about
thing.
19 months to the 2023 general election, there's no room for, let us tell ourselves the truth. There's no room for or any chance of any small political party winning election. Let us tell ourselves the truth, because like I said, politics is big money and it's big business. You need big players with war chests, heavy war chests. So are you talking about the only party that can try to make attempt in Nigeria among the smaller opposition parties, APGA? And APGA is just concentrated around the southeast, particular Anambra State. And others who are also winning election on the platform of APGA, they enjoy what I call protest vote, like Hembe of Benue, the daughter of the former Senate President, Mark Blessing Onu. They were all members of the two major political parties, because they were one thing or the other happened. They were denied, they couldn't secure the party's ticket to represent their constituency. They moved on to APGA, and they got protest vote.
That is what they call political forum shopping.
Yes.
When you start forum shopping in search of greener pasture, looking for a political party
18 to 19 months to the next general election, they don't have time. Let us tell ourselves the truth. But they can make one or two, impact in some locations, like the PRP in Bauchi and others, and even all the candidates that won election also, they got it as a result of protests by members of the two major political parties who felt shortchanged by the denial of their candidates. So, issue of funding in Nigerian politics is very, very crucial. The politics is highly monetized. It is money-driven politics. And because of the poverty level of Nigerians, people vote on the basis of what they can get. No matter what you say, it will take a long time. It will take a long time of sensitization, education, to convince Nigerians that, look, integrity matters. People who are genuinely out to serve Nigeria in election should be voted. In Nigeria today, it's all about what I can get.
Even the electorate are not even helping matters.
How many talks can be
matters.
mobilized?
Because just like what he said, Nigerians, sorry to cut you short, Nigerians are only after what they can get. At the end of the day, Nigerians will go for all these small naira these politicians will throw at them. They won't go for competence.
I recall in 2019, the way Nigerians were running after, the way Nigerians voters were running after money. But today, look at them lamenting. Everyday things are expensive. Because of food item is high, this and that. Recently, a friend told me that he has about 7 kids, 2 wives. He said his greatest challenge now is feeding his kids to buy food. But this same man, in 17 months' time now, by the time he sees words of naira, he will forget that, look, it is better I vote. It will be good if I vote, if I toe the line of integrity, transfer, people that are committed, honesty, than these words of naira notes. So poverty again, and that is, for me, I see that as a tool in the hands of politicians. Keep the people in their state of poverty, so that they will always be loyal
to us.
Yes,
and we'll always use them as a wishful tool to maintain power. But you are very right, Paul. But let's look at, since the APC and PDP have this structure and this financial capacity to pull strings, pundits believe that these other parties can come together and form a major the way the APC did in 2013. It was that major, I think, the coming together of ACN, CPC, APP that brought about what we call APC today. So do you see the possibility of these political parties forming a major in 2023, ahead of 2023?
Well, the prospect of the third force emerging has been there. It's been there for a long time, and it's not unusual. It has become part of our political journey now, part of our political evolution. Whether it will materialize the way APC materialized is a different matter, because no two situations are the same. However, are Nigerians be ready to embrace that kind of arrangement this time around?
And of course, sorry to cut you short, some Nigerians are saying that third force is still like recycling.
Exactly.
Set of
It's the
politicians.
same set of old
Exactly.
wine in the same. Like at the end of the day, if you talk of third force, Obasanjo is there. Obasanjo is part of that third force, if I'm not lying.
Yes, so so it's about whether Nigerians are ready to be schooled on that all over again. The emergence of APC was a long-term clamor because the process had started before 2011, but it failed. And before then, Nigerians had started clamoring for, oh, if only there was a strong structure to challenge the mammoth PDP, perhaps. And so APC came around, and this is what we have. So it's a question of whether Nigerians will be psychologically ready for that kind of third force. It will be an intriguing prospect, because with what APC has done, I don't know, perhaps it has affected the political psychology of Nigerians to be ready to embrace
And then now they become
a
worried
new.
of
I'm
any
telling you,
mega
so
party.
it's really something that would be interesting to see.
Well,
But whether a third force can emerge, of course, absolutely. With funds, it can happen. With the alignment of interest, it can happen. But whether Nigerians
Are ready.
will be ready to embrace that kind of process all over again, having suffered what they're suffering now, is a different game altogether.
well, thank you, Chibuzo. Of course, listener, you've heard it all. And of course, you're left to use your tongue and count your teeth. That is the much we can take for today's big issue. And of course, I will not forget to thank our very, very vibrant in-house analyst here for doing a very good job in interrogating this particular issue. Of course, I will say thank you very much, Chibuzo, Muyiwa, and so join us same time tomorrow for another edition of this program. Bye for now.